Hello, folks. Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. Thanks for being here. I hope you're well. I hope you are staying safe, and if you are out in the streets, I know you're doing this, but keep an eye out on those around you. We are all behind you and the message. At least I can say that I am. I'm sure. If you listen to the show regularly, I am sure you're aware that I know you don't listen to this podcast for my take on current events or my or to hear me pontificate on the nature of the world and societal ills. There are much smarter people and more read people, well-read folks who could do that. But just so that it is on the record, so that if anyone ever has any questions about where I might stand, because I don't engage with this stuff often on Facebook or social media, because I don't want to get drawn into fights. And I figure if you want to know where I stand on issues, you can talk to me in person. But it's very important that I feel a need to make sure that everyone knows where I stand on this. And it's very simple. Black Lives Matter. There is no other position that you can take that's acceptable other than Black Lives Matter. And there are a lot of great organizations out there that could use support right now. We'll talk a bit about those later. If anything, I hope to provide you guys a brief break from the horrors of American society at this moment, especially with the eyes of the world on us and the continued failure of leadership to stop it or to make anything to make sure that this doesn't continue to happen. That being unarmed Black Americans being killed by police. You can, of course, look up and donate to the George Floyd Memorial Fund, the Minnesota Freedom Fund, Reclaim the Block, National Bailout, Black Lives Matter, Black Visions Collective. There are a lot of very worthwhile organizations that could use support in this time in history. So that being said, I'll get on to we'll get on to the meat of the show today. My guest on the show is Matt Storm. Matt Storm is a podcaster. DJ, I learned, and I actually met Matt outside in Brooklyn, deep in Bushwick, outside of an MC Lars concert a few months ago. It was actually the last concert I went to before the quarantine started. And Matt has several podcasts that you can enjoy. I'll have links to all of them in the description. We're going to talk about them a bit. But Matt this was our first kind of long chat, and I enjoyed getting to talk with him. So I hope you enjoy this as well. And thanks for being here. And let's go to my chat with Matt Storm. Yeah, life in quarantine is it's weird but oddly familiar, because I feel like having like somewhat like nerdy introverted tendencies. I feel like I'm adapting to this maybe better than I should, considering the implications for the state of the world. But yeah, I think it's I'm making the best of it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I am more introverted than my spouse is. So yeah, like I could spend hours a day playing video games or doing stuff online or working on my podcasts, and like the time will pass and I won't even notice. And she'll be like, "We should go outside. We haven't gone on a walk in a while," which is important. But like my brain that doesn't jump to the front of it. I'm just like, "Oh yeah, I haven't seen the world in like several days. Maybe I should put a mask on and actually go outside."
Yeah, exactly. Like what is left of the world? What is different? That's the fun challenge I've been having for myself the last every time I go out. That and figuring out how to wear a mask and not have my glasses fog up. But that's
an impossible victory. I just, after a while, I try and breathe through my nose, and usually that's better. but then they'll still fog up, so I'll just take my glasses off because I'm not completely blind without them. The world is just very blurry, but I can like navigate. So I will just take them off out of frustration and anger of fogged up glasses.
Yeah, that's I kind of end up doing the same thing. I've heard that if you wash your glasses with soap and water, it leaves a film that makes it harder for condensation to form. But I wanted to tell you, I feel like I'm really ready for this interview because before we jumped on this podcast, I finally created a Steam account, and I feel like
nice.
Yeah, I feel like because I was a hardcore gamer when I was a kid. Like I was very, very lucky, and I had like almost every system, and I was really dialed in. And then, I got busy and like I had a performance career, so I didn't have as much time to sit and play games. And then I was like, you don't have to go to the store to get new games anymore. It's just a revelation for me.
Yeah, I've been a pretty heavy gamer most of my life. I think that when I first met my spouse, I didn't have my consoles. I was staying with her quite a bit when we first started dating, and so like she didn't have a TV because she had a laptop and watched streaming services and was like, "What do I need a TV for?" And as a gamer who mostly had consoles, I was like, "What do you mean you don't have a TV?" But eventually I got back into it with the PlayStation 4 generation, and like I've been super into it. But I've always had a gaming PC of some kind or another and played games online. And so like now that I have 2 video game podcasts, I'm more on the pulse than I ever was before. But but that said, like there was like a 4-year gap where I was like, what's a video game? What are people playing?
Exactly. Like when I got an Xbox and was playing Call of Duty and just gleefully in just enjoying the experience without all of the cultural implications. It was just it was such a freeing time. So do you feel like because you podcast about video games, and I don't know if you like do Twitch or stream or not, do you feel like that affects your kind of experience of the game because you're thinking about it critically?
Well, so to answer your first question, part of your question's first part question, yes, I do stream on Twitch. I have a mediocre following, but it's fun and I enjoy doing it and people show up, and so I'll keep doing it until people stop showing up. But that said, no, I don't think so. I think that the difference is like I used to do a very critical music podcast for many years that's now on indefinite hiatus. And like that affected how I listened to music because we were reviewing albums every week. We were breaking them down track by track. And so it really changed how I viewed music. And I've always been a music nerd. I don't feel like my video game podcasts are doing that as much because one of them's about the Mass Effect series, which hasn't had a new installment in a while. And so we're just looking back at the older stuff. And then my other gaming podcast, Fun and Games, is more celebration of gaming. So we're more talking about general topics in gaming, like games with silent protagonists, sports games, action-adventure games, and like kind of just celebrating what we loved about them and maybe commenting on what we don't like. But we're not really like putting a lens to it.
Sure.
And so I think I don't feel that kind of pressure. I feel society pressures me more than anything else. Like if a game company is doing some heinous crunch bullshit or some heinous like racist, sexist BS, like that'll influence me more on a game than any kind of critical lens, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of frees you from that, I have to do a video about why Superman 64 sucks because that'll get a lot of views. It's not as if that. Yeah. It's not as if it's not as if there's somebody out there thinking, "Oh, that's Superman 64." How do people feel about that? Oh no. I wanted to ask you something. Because you and I met outside of an MC Lars Schaefer the Dark Lord show, if memory serves me correctly. I don't know if I exactly recall your last name because I've been looking at you on Twitter for the past couple of months, and I just know Stormageddon.
Yes, which is the moniker I go by, but my last name is in fact Storm, Storm. So hence where the nickname comes from.
Matt Storm. That's like an X-Men name. That's solid. That's great.
Technically, if we're going to get really nerdy as I push up my glasses, it's a Fantastic Four name because Storm's actual name was Aurora Monroe, whereas Johnny Storm was in the Fantastic Four. So, it's more of a Fantastic Four name, if anything.
No, that makes total sense. I love this kind of talk. So Matt, where do you come from? Are you from New York originally?
Yeah, born and raised. I was born in Brooklyn, and my family and I moved to Staten Island when I was around 3. So I vaguely remember that experience. And then I grew up in Staten Island. I went to college I went to the College of Staten Island. I went to high school in Staten Island. Lived there for many years, and then I was pretty much in Staten Island until I met my spouse 7 years ago, and then I moved to Brooklyn. But yeah, I've been in New York my whole life. I sometimes give my spouse shit. She'll be like, I've been in New York for however many years she's been here, and I was like, oh, well, I've been here for 36 years because I'm 36 years old, and she'll roll her eyes at me, like, okay, so.
That's funny. Yeah, my fiance is born and raised in Brooklyn, so I will never be a New Yorker to her. Just it's never happening. It's kind of a bone of contention I have. It was like I'm staying here through the coronavirus. Do I get any credit? She's like, nah. Never will be a native. So how is Staten Island? I feel like the rest of New York City looks at Staten Island and just kind of goes, "What's going on over there?" I have a lot of friends from Staten Island.
I know. We recently on Twitter had a conversation about that, which I'll bring up in a bit. But yeah, I grew up there, and so I always thought it was fine. I know that it's like the only solid red part of a blue New York, which I never occurred to me when I was a kid because I didn't think about that kind of stuff that much. But that said, I like people like to complain about the dump and like how you can't get around. It sucks that there's no subway except one train that goes from one end to the other and has like 4 stops. And like the bus system kind of sucks, but like living there was always fine. I had a great apartment while I was there. I loved my parents' neighborhood where I grew up in Village Greens, and like I always thought it was fine. It wasn't until like I got older and went to college and it was like, oh, you're from Staten Island? Why? I was like, but we're going to school in Staten Island. The college is here. Like, why are you here?
Exactly.
And like all of my friends that I've made over the years, a lot of them stemmed from meeting them in Staten Island. One of which those friends, through a mutual friend, is Paul Cohen, who you are apparently very good friends with, which blew my mind. I met Paul. So Paul and I went to high school together. We both went to Susan Wagner. And I met him through my good friend Neil Lazarus, who is now married with multiple children in New Jersey. But he was friends with Paul. I think they were in band together. And then he introduced me to Paul when I started going to Wagner, and we hung out a lot back then. I haven't seen Paul in ages, but like we were close enough then. And so it was so funny when I was listening to episodes and prepping for the show. I like to be a professional and tune in when I can. I listen to like 100 podcasts, so like catching up on anyone's backlog is impossible.
Yeah.
But I saw that name and I went, no way. There's no way. There's got to be a bunch of Paul Cohens. And I tuned in and it was him. And I was like, oh my God, that's great. It really blew my mind. It was pretty funny.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Paul is great. Like we're in a sketch group together. I'm the tech for a sketch comedy group he's in with a couple of other guys. And we really like bonded. Like as soon as like Newfound Glory came into the conversation, we were just like, oh, we're best friends now. So every year I decided that at least once a year, me and Paul are going to recap the year in pop punk, as long as I'm doing this show. So he was telling me about this like really cool, like when he was in high school, this like really cool, like DIY kind of pop punk scene that all the kids were doing, and that really resonated with me because I love those kinds of scenes. Like I kind of romanticize like the New Jersey basement scene or the like local shows at the Armory that I used to go to where I'm from, like way back in the day.
Yeah, Staten Island had that scene, and I believe Paul was in a band. I know that my friend Joe was in a band, and like there were a ton of bands that I don't even listen to anymore that I remember loving, like this band called Ring and Run that was in my neighborhood. There were a bunch of others, and like I grew up listening to pop punk and ska, which I still listen to, though not as much as I used to. But like, yes, definitely a point on our friendship was talking about those bands because we all listened to them back then. I do remember talking about like Newfound Glory and SR-71 and Sum 41 and Blink-182 and all those bands, which I always have a soft spot for, even if I don't listen to them as much as I used to. And I've missed that scene. Like the music scene in New York is nothing like it used to be. You can still see good music if you hunt for it, but like I remember when I was a kid in high school, I could like just go to the local basement venue and see 3 great bands that I'd never heard of and may never see again.
Oh yeah, like I was talking to Matt from Wheatus was telling me like out in Long Island you would have this great venue that would have like all these local bands, and then they would like headline like shows during the week, and then they would open for the big band that was coming through town, and like it would be packed every single night. Like I so love hearing about like times like that, because I'm just so stressed all the time. Like whenever I do a show, just like, oh, is anyone going to show up to this, or am I just going to be rehearsing in a room? SR-71, I was listening to. I love them. They're like one of my favorite. They're still like one of my favorite bands. I really enjoy their stuff, and Now You See Inside, like still the songs are just so good.
Yeah. Yeah, what's interesting about a lot of those bands, like I will always and forever be and it's sort of a tangent, but like I'm a diehard Max Box 20 fan. I've loved Rob Thomas since the first album, Yourself or Someone Like You, and I followed his solo career. And like they're one of those bands that people outside of who listen to them regularly, like, oh, they're just some pop band, like who cares? But me, sure. I've seen their growth as a band because I'm such a big fan. And like SR-71 is one of those bands that like I could mention that to someone who is unfamiliar with them, and they'll go, is that really a band name? Like, who are those people? Because it's just like they didn't have the kind of fame that a lot of other bands in that scene did, Right. And I think that's what's really interesting about that era of music, is there were a ton of great bands that kind of disappeared that I remember like loving and being like, this is the next big thing. I'm going to love this band forever. And then they kind of just disappear.
Yeah. Like it's kind of weird the way like the music industry kind of plays out like that, and like what who continues on and like who kind of like diverts off. Like Mitch Allen like has gone on to be a very prolific songwriter. He's written for like lots of pop stars and such. I find that stuff used to kind of frighten me, but now I feel like it's kind of cool to be like have your like tour and do your creative thing, but then also have like a main thing as well, like a job. I find that kind of very very cool and kind of comforting in some weird way, especially right now. So you were a music guy early on. Do you play any instruments?
I don't. I'm a DJ. I've been DJing for over a decade. And I played like bad guitar in high school, like everybody else my age did. I was a tall, skinny white kid with baggy Jenko jeans, lots of chains.
Excellent.
Like, of course, I played guitar for like a summer, but I was not very good at it. I remember teaching myself a few songs and then never following through with it. I was gonna sing in a band with a friend of mine who was a guitar player, but it fell through. And so, like, I've written a couple songs, but nothing's ever been published or released. But when I hit college, I befriended a few burlesque performers, and one of them, their burlesque company was looking for someone to help with like pressing buttons and helping run the show. And slowly but surely, I started building up like a repertoire with them and building custom playlists for the shows. And then the next thing I knew, I was starting to DJ pretty professionally. And now like I have my own rig and setup. I don't have my own turntables. I do a lot of kind of like playlist mixing. I don't do a lot of on the fly mixing or remixing. But like I do private events, I do shows, I do all sorts of stuff. I haven't figured out the magic to DJing on Twitch yet, though folks do that. That may be the next step. But yeah, my musicality comes from recognizing intricacies in music that will get people dancing more so than making music myself.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. I remember I would love to get into this, to DJing stuff a little bit, because when I was younger and kind of a little more opinionated. I probably expressed the opinion that I didn't think DJs were musicians a couple of times out loud. But the way my feeling on DJism has evolved is that I now view the DJ as like a sound designer.
Yep.
I think about
sure.
I think about it more like that, because I've designed for like when I was in high school, like picking like the song that would start like the beginning of the scene or end the play, like that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
so you get in. So what initially, and then also like the having to understand a lot about music as far as like beats per minute and what keys songs are in and fading them into each other. What initially drew you to DJing?
So, I mean, what it was I just listened to a lot of music. I just had a large knowledge of music. I liked, I'd say 95% of genres, and it was never a thing I thought that I would do professionally. It was just a thing I liked doing. Like, I made mixtapes as a kid. I made mix CDs as a high schooler. And then once Spotify became a thing, I started making custom playlists like crazy for friends, for shows. And I was like, I'm effectively doing part of the thing that DJs do. Maybe this is the thing I could do more of. And it wasn't honestly until I discovered Nerdcore, which is one of the things we have in common that brought us together,
Yes.
that I was like, oh, you can make music and engage with music about the things I grew up doing. Because like I always loved hip hop. I grew up listening to Busta Rhymes and Puff Daddy and B.I.G. and Tupac. But like there wasn't always a ton of relatability to the music, obviously.
Sure. You were an inner city black kid in
I was
Bed-Stuy?
not. I was not. No, I knew some, but I was not myself. But you know, discovering Nerdcore is like, oh, this. My brain couldn't even process. I was like, you can do music about this, and that got me looking into more stuff because there are tons of famous, you know, producers and Nerdcore DJs. I mean, between Michael Kill and Vince Vandal and even DJ Cutman, like who make their own music but make a business out of being producers and helping produce records. I was like, oh, you can be a DJ and make music for people or mix music yourself. I can do that to some degree or another. I should try that. A lot of it was failing upward. A lot of it was calling myself a DJ before I probably should have called myself a DJ. But it's one of those things where if you're confident enough, people are not going to correct you, and you can lie your way into a lot of spaces until you actually start learning and gathering the skills, which is, I think, something pretty much every artist does at some point somewhere.
Oh, 100%. Stand-up comedy works exactly like that. All stand-up comedy has the origin story is somebody saw a comedian they didn't think was very funny, and they're like, I'm funnier than that. I can do that. And then it's just kind of like, oh yeah, I totally have half-hour material when you have like maybe 10 minutes, and then you just kind of figure out the other 20. What was your introduction to Nerdcore?
So my introduction to Nerdcore, like many who came before me, was with MC Frontalot. So this is actually a pretty funny origin story because now, many years later, so the first Nerdcore concert I ever went to was MC Frontalot at Littlefield, I believe, and Schaefer the Dark Lord was opening for him. Earlier that day, I had gone to the Quidditch World Cup and seen a sideshow performance, including one Nelson Lugo. Many years later now, I am quite good friends with both Nelson Lugo and Schaefer the Dark Lord. I met them both the same day. I didn't realize they were friends. But yeah, my earliest experience was, I believe it was the 0 Day tour. 0 Day had just came out, and I had seen MC Frontalot's name in places. I'd been to the Penny Arcade Expo, and I was like, oh, I have to go see this guy. I hear he's really good. Fell in love with him and Schaefer immediately. Bought all of his albums on the spot, including the newest one, and kind of just went down a wormhole from there. My favorite thing about Nerdcore, especially in a Spotify world, is like Wikipedia articles on Spotify, anytime they feature somebody, for the most part, if the algorithm's working correctly, it has a hyperlink to the featured artist. And so, like, I just spent that weekend listening to all of Schaefer and Frontalot's records and then just clicking through to the other artists featured and checking out that stuff. And it's how I found Beefy and Dual Core and Lars and every other artist who's been around. And I fell in love with the genre immediately and went out of my way to find pretty much any artist I could who was in it
Mm-hmm.
both good and bad. Though I would say the majority of artists in the nerdcore community have skill to one level or another. I'd say more certain artists don't click with me. It's not necessarily that their music's not good. It's just that maybe I don't get into their stuff. But that said, like I found a ton of stuff I loved, and like knowing that you could write songs about D&D and fucking your own clone and anything else that these nerdy brains could come up with, like I was just enamored, and it's become the dominant type of music I listen to ever since. I listen to a ton of other stuff, but like it's kind of the comfort food I always go back to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because until you hear someone do a song about how Hot Topic is not punk rock, you have no idea that's even a possibility to do a song about that. Yeah, absolutely, man. Like the thing I think is great about like the core nerdcore artists is those guys and gals are all like not only very well versed in the stuff that they rap about and are passionate about. So there's a lot of like enthusiasm that's kind of hard to not find charm and enjoyment from. But I feel like they also all have a very healthy respect for not just the genre, but the history of the genre as well. Even if like
For sure.
like going way back to like the Bronx house parties in the 70s, like Lars especially, like, you know, he kind of has the like Run DMC, like the Adidas thing going. You can't help but not want to like learn more about what that guy's cool. What does he like? I'll go listen to all that. That's like the equivalent. That's like the modern day equivalent of like when you would get a CD and then you would look through the book to see what bands the band thanked. And then you're like,
and then go find those bands.
Exactly. Yeah, and Vince Vandal, have you ever made any attempts to like make beats or do like hip hop instrumentals?
So I've played with it, but I've not released or anything, and that's because none of it's good enough, and I know it's not good enough. But like I've toyed with it. I don't know if I want to produce music. I did some music production on the mixing and mastering side of like a friend of mine was like a indie rocker, and like I helped him mix his demo. But like making my own beat stuff, it just seems a little beyond me. Pretty much if we can ever see people in person again, I want to invite Michael Kill out to New York, since I've been wanting to hang out with him anyway, and like have him spend the weekend and like just pick his brain the whole weekend and like buy him food and buy him drinks and just like hang out. But like, no, I haven't professionally done any of it yet. I've thought about it. It's just, I know I don't have the skill set yet for it. And then like so the theme to Autographs, which is my interview series, the current theme for that was produced and created by Michael Kill. I hired him to make the song, and I couldn't decide what I wanted, and like I gave him some like descriptors, and then he came up with that awesome like little like punk rock little jingle, and like I love it. It's one of those things where I think maybe if I sat down and spent more time with it, I could do it. But I also have 4 podcasts, I stream live, and I'm a DJ, so I was like,
sure,
you know, you gotta cut the chaff somewhere if the skills aren't developing fast enough. But it's something I'm still definitely interested in. It's just not something I've really done.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm teaching myself lots of audio production and music production. Like this company Tune Track had a giant sale this month, so I've got like drum programs and keyboard and piano programs and mixing and mastering. Nice. I'm gonna cut like an entire quarantine EP by the time this is all said and done. I'm really into it. So you went to college in Staten Island, and what did you go to school for?
So I went to school for corporate communications, which is long for bullshit. It's not real. I mean, I guess it is. It was essentially effectively enough business without the economics and some other courses, and enough communications without the focus on that side. It's like a little bit of both. And like it's a degree that's come back because my day job, though I'm furloughed at the moment, I've been working in like office management and executive assisting. So like the degree sort of leaned into that, but I definitely didn't go to school for anything that I'm doing. Like audio engineering, I taught myself. I took one audio engineering course at College of Staten Island, but like all the editing I've been doing, all of the recording, all of that stuff is self-taught. Like I just over years and making loads of mistakes professionally until I figured out how to actually do it well.
Yeah, that is so much the thing for so many creative people I know. It's like, and for the longest time, like it was only like last year that I finally took a creative class. Like I went to school for theater, but I don't really consider that the same thing.
Right.
But I took a voiceover class, and for the longest time, I thought that any kind of acting class was like a scam or somebody who was like going to be very bitter and cynical. And I had this teacher, Paula Barty, who's like who I felt so inspired and like encouraged, and I learned so much in like 3 classes, and it was. But yeah, like so much of like figuring out how to do stuff is, well, I just fucked up constantly until I read something and then I didn't fuck it up anymore.
Pretty much. Like it's funny. I just had, as of when we're recording this, I recently had Mega Ran back on my interview series, and Mega Ran was like my 12th guest or 22nd guest or something. Like he was really early on, and like I listened to that old episode, which was recorded over a phone with an iPhone app. The quality is terrible. The interview is okay. Mega Ran is great. He's always great. But like the interview was okay. And like it was so satisfying to listen through while I was editing the newest interview, and like I've grown so much. Mega Ran has grown so much. Like to see that longevity. If I could shelve the first 50 episodes of my interview podcast, I would, but I'm not going to, because I just don't think they're up to the standards I've created now. I will say with the newer shows that I'm doing outside of the interview series that have been shorter running, I took a lot of what I learned to make those shows hit the ground running pretty well. I think the more recent episodes are still the better episodes, but I definitely don't feel like I had the same kind of runway of like, I need to suck till I get better that I did with my older shows.
Totally. How's this interview going so far?
Great. You're doing wonderful.
Oh, fantastic. Good to hear. Good to hear. Well, because I know, because I feel like it's pretty easy to make jokes about how many podcasts there are, and especially around with comedians, because every comedian has a podcast now. But I think that there is an underappreciated kind of finesse and to making a podcast that's actually engaging, because I've listened to so many, like, I just can't listen to like 3 or 4 guys talk over each other about what's going on what they kind of half remember from Twitter that day. But so you have, and how old is your oldest podcast?
The oldest podcast I believe I started in, so the oldest podcast was my music review show, which I started over a decade ago. But that one is now on hiatus. So of the ones currently still running, Autographs, I believe, is about 8 years old or 7 years old. And then Fun and Games, Reignite, and Snark all started within the last few years. Those are on the newer side, and they're on a network together. So, like, I've been dabbling with audio to one degree or another for probably about a decade or so.
Oh, wow. So you were like sounds like you might have been like pretty early on when it comes to podcasting. Because like the first couple of podcasts I remember, like it was Kevin Smith and tech podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah, I started the first podcast I started listening to, I don't listen to anymore because the host is a assaulting D-bag who deserves to die in a fire. But I stopped listening to, it was a comedy podcast, and I stopped listening to that now. But like he was one of the progenitors, as well as Mark Maron, who I liked a lot in the early days, but I found his interview style conflicts with how I think an interview should go, just because he's very, he's a little abrasive because that's Mark Maron. Like he's that guy.
Yeah, that's kind of who he is.
Right. But that said, his interviews are phenomenal. They're just not always for me. But I was starting a little after those folks were starting. But I don't have the audience they had. Like I didn't have any kind of real connection. I just wanted to do the thing. And so I did it. And the first show I did, Crash Chords, which is the namesake for Crash Chords Autographs, was a weekly music review podcast that came out every Monday. Me and my 2 co-hosts, John and Steve, would we would take turns picking an album and then bring it on the show, listen to it together, write notes about each track, and then break it down track by track and then rate it. And then we would usually have some kind of music-related conversation afterwards, like about cliches in the music industry or a certain kind of music genre. And then we would have guests sometimes and put a fourth voice in the mix, and they would bring an album, and we would review that album. If they were a musician, though, we wouldn't have them bring their album because we didn't want to review someone's album while they were there. Because I feel like, first of all, it's not fair to the artist because their vision and what we're nitpicking may not go in line. But also, if I have a guest on, it's either because I've met them somewhere or I know them personally, and I'd much rather celebrate their music than break it down. But then the process of recording that show would take anywhere between 6 to 8 hours between listening together, taking notes, recording, making adjustments, making edits. And so it eventually petered out just because me and my two co-hosts just couldn't keep it going. But during that time, while that was happening, I created Crash Chords Autographs because literally I was like, I like interview podcasts. F it, I'm going to make my own interview podcast. And I did. And I tricked folks in the industry to believing that I have some semblance of talent because now I get some pretty cool guests. But yeah, it was one of those things where literally I saw it done and I was like, I want to do that thing. I don't know if I'll be any good at it, but let's do it. And the rest is history, as it were, at least with those originals.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah, like the other thing I love about this format is that it gives you that there's a somewhat social element to it. So like I feel like it makes you feel like you're less alone, and then especially kind of following the trajectory of how segmented the entertainment industry has become is quite literally, if you're really into a thing, you can find other people that are really into that thing and not be alone in the world. And I really enjoy that feeling of not being alone, at least for us a little while, if that makes any sense. For
sure. Actually, that's a good segue because one of my other podcasts that I do currently called Reignite is a Mass Effect themed podcast. It's about we're currently playing through the second Mass Effect game. We've already done the first game. We're going to cover the trilogy and Mass Effect Andromeda. And like, what's really surprising about that show is this is me and a good friend of mine, just like, we love this game and this game series. We want to talk about it. Let's do a podcast. But what it's grown into is we're playing you create your own character in Mass Effect, and so we're playing through the game as if we're the lead character, making decisions based on how we would make those decisions in those moments, playing it honestly, and then discussing our choices, and also discussing how the games have aged and details about each mission. And it's had the biggest following of any of the shows I do because it's what you're talking about. People want to feel seen, especially with Mass Effect. It's a trilogy and then another one-off game that hasn't had an installment in a while. So like the fan base is hungry for anything about it. And like we've been discovered by folks who are not friends or friends of friends who've just searched Mass Effect podcasts and found us. And that's pretty cool. And like it's the most active Discord on the certain POV server. It's got like we've got the most active fan base, and like it all comes from what you were just talking about. This need to feel seen and just knowing that there are other people out there who like a thing as much as you do and want to talk about it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I like just last night, about a year ago, I did an interview with a guy named Alex Von David, who's the voiceover director for the English dub of Sword Art Online and Kill la Kill and a bunch of other anime. But Sword Art Online is my favorite show. It gets me called gay on the internet a lot, but and I can't defend everything that the writer has ever put in the show, but
Sure.
I really enjoy it. And I found somebody had posted it on a Sword Art Online subreddit. I don't know this person, and they were breaking down like what we were talking about, like, oh, this was a really interesting part, and they really talked a lot about this, and Will is clearly one of us. And that I was like, I am. Because that's like a thing I can't talk about anyone else because of all the cultural implications of anime in general, and then especially people who know anime and have feelings about this particular series. I really dig that, and especially right now, like I never thought how fragile like careers in events were. Like I just did an interview with a friend who his career is like event production, so he's kind of fucked right now.
Yeah, for sure.
And then like my industry is getting on stage. So what do you do when you can't get on stage? some of my friends are having a really rough go of it, but I was so fortunate not only to employment wise be pretty stable, but also to continue to be able to do this. I was like, oh, I just need to buy one cable and then I can still do this remotely. Okay, great.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I was hosting and DJing in the burlesque scene in New York a lot, and then back in February, I made this decision to step back from that and spend less time doing gigs because I wanted to focus on my podcasting. I wanted to start going to more conventions. I wanted to start meeting more people because I knew I had some connections in the industries that I record within, but also like these have grown without me really putting 100% into it. So what would happen if I did put 100% into it? Because clearly I do a lot of podcasts. I have a thing for that medium. I should focus on it. And so I'd taken that step back. I'd stopped producing with this troupe Magical Girl Burlesque, who I adore. The other producers, Raina and Betty, are phenomenal, and it's in good hands. Like, they didn't really need me by the end anyway. But like I just started scaling stuff back because I wanted to start approaching other stuff. And then this, the nonsense that we're stuck in now happened and live events shut down. And I was like, wow, I picked a good time to shift focus because it went away whether I wanted it to or not. And it was absolutely fortuitous in a way, because so many more of my friends who their source of income was performing live are now screwed. I mean, a lot of them had day jobs, but not all of them did. And so the time we're in now, especially for anyone who does stuff live, like it's why I've leaned into Twitch streaming more, because I need connection with, I don't want to say fans, I hate the word fans, but like an audience or like peers. And through Twitch streaming, through podcasting, through doing live stuff on Instagram, like you can get that connection that right now I can't get in person because we can't be in a building together with any other people.
Yeah, 100%. Is there somebody on Crash Course Autographs that you haven't had on yet that you'd love to have on? Because I love the idea of like deep. I love deep dive kind of like music talks. Like I get like super granular and like, oh, this part goes before that part, and why is this song earlier on the album? Who are somebody?
So
who's someone you would
before the music show, so Autographs is the interview show. Before the music show went on hiatus, we reviewed an album by Chili Gonzalez called Chambers. And Chili Gonzalez, for those who don't know, is kind of a jazz musician who dabbles in a lot of pop aesthetics. Phenomenal musician. And on that episode, we went down a diatribe about why the songs were named a certain way. Like, it seemed like he was trying to be cheeky. And like he replied to our episode post saying, you guys thought about this way more than I even did, but this is great analysis. Like, this did influence that. And so that was really cool. If I could have a guest on the music review show, it would probably be, living or dead, it would be Freddie Mercury, because I love Freddie Mercury. I love Queen. But if it had to be someone alive and not a zombie, probably Rob Thomas. He's a musician I've listened to a lot. I've known well. I would love to talk to him about his work. I think he'd be a really great guest and I would love for him to bring an album that influenced him. Like when I had Schaefer the Dark Lord on the music review show, he brought a Beastie Boys album, and that was pretty cool to analyze a Beastie Boys record with Schaefer, who is a very prominently known fan of the Beastie Boys. On the interview show, that list is endless. Like, I'll interview anybody. I've already had so many dream interviews. Like I mentioned earlier, I had Mecca Ran. I had MC Lars on, and he was a blast. I've had Schaefer. I've had Michael Kill several times. Like, a lot of my nerdy idols have already been on the show, and it's been great. But if I could interview anybody, it would be the actor John C. McGinley, most famously known as playing Dr. Cox on Scrubs. He's one of my favorite actors, and I think it would just be a fascinating conversation because he's been character acting for so long in so many different things. Either that or from Scrubs, Zach Braff and Donald Faison together, because I'm obsessed with Scrubs and I love the two of them. They would be an ideal dream guest too, because they're my comedy idols. Like, I love that show. I love the work they've done since. And I think that would be a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, I really liked that show as well. You might enjoy their rewatch podcast they're doing about Scrubs.
I've been listening.
Killer.
I'm up to date.
Excellent. Let's talk about Matchbox 20, because I imagine someone listening to this might pick that out as an unusual band to be really really into. But I know exactly what you're talking about, because that first album has, for like 90s like power pop, I don't even know if you would call them that, but I call them that, or like radio rock. Amazing
Yeah.
song. Like those songs are so ridiculously good.
Yeah, that not self-titled, that record, Yourself or Someone Like You, like just blew me away on a level that I was not expecting. And I stayed with them after that. And like, as they went on, their albums got poppier and poppier. And I don't mind that. Like, I love pop music. I love pop punk. I like emo bands when they go pop. There, I said it. Panic at the Disco, better now. Don't at me. They're better now than they were. I don't like their oldest albums.
Controversial music opinions. I am all for it, though. I will second that statement, because I feel like when you get a firmer grasp on like pop songwriting, that is something to be commended, because that is a tricky format to find. But I was listening to Dashboard Confessional's latest album, and I've been a fan of them since high school. So I remember when like Chris Carrabba was coming out of like the Florida hardcore scene and like singing in Further Seems
Right.
Forever, and the song still had that. You could tell that there was a punk rock kind of influence to the chords. It's lots of fast strumming.
Sure.
It's lots of like droning kind of chords. But then to listen to a song like Heartbeat here, that is a beautifully crafted folk pop song. Like spectacular, like amazingly well done. Like just the way it's composed is that is like put it in a under glass. It's just excellent.
Well, yeah, it's funny. A lot of people piss on pop songwriting, and like we said earlier that nerdcore is one of my favorite genres. I'd say my second favorite genre is pop music. I listen to a ton of pop music because pop music can encompass anything. Like some of my favorite albums from this year. God, did they come out this year? I can't even remember at this point. But like Halsey put out a new record that I loved. Kesha put out a brand new record finally that's under her own steam that is phenomenal. And like, these are artists that would be lumped into pop music, but they have soul and hip hop and R&B and so much other stuff. And like, there's like even Taylor Swift's newest record. Like, I like her music. I think she's a talented musician, and I think I'm like getting hate on the internet for stupid shit she does or says or whatever. Like, fine, I'm not gonna dive into that. But from a songwriting perspective, I think she's a phenomenal writer and does really great work. And for people to write it off because it's pop music just doesn't make sense to me, because no songwriting is easy. Like, I used to piss on Nickelback all the time. And while I still think that a lot of their music is trite and I just don't think it's very skillful, it's still not easy to write songs. You still have to put pen to paper. You still have to create. I don't like Nickelback anymore. I don't think any of their songs are particularly good, but that doesn't mean they still didn't. Like, I will never say a band sucks, because if you got published and you got money for your music, there's something to that, right? Like, there's some level of hard work and skill
determination
somewhere in there. Yeah.
Because you'll get told no so many times. Like the number of like record deals that have happened and then fallen through where the album never gets to put out. That's frightening to think that you could get caught in a situation like that. Taylor Swift will always be cool with me, because I saw, ever since I saw a video of her, she was doing a show in Arizona, and she and Jim Adkins from Jimmy Eat World came out, and they did the middle, and like during the breakdown, she starts talking to the crowd, and she's like, "This man wrote some of the songs that got me through the hardest times in my life." So I'd be like, "All right, we're cool, T Swift."
Yeah.
And then when they covered "We're Never Getting Back Together," it was like I liked the back and back and forth.
I love
that.
Jimmy Eat World. They're phenomenal. I haven't listened to their newest record, but like I like
it's good.
Futures and The Middle Bleed American are great records. Funny thing about them. Funny thing about Jimmy Eat World is, so my spouse is from Arizona. She grew up in Arizona, and to her, Jimmy Eat World is still this like local rock band that she used to see in because she grew up in I believe in Tempe. She'll kill me if she hears this later and I get it wrong, but like she grew up in Arizona, and like I was like, oh yeah, I love Jimmy Eat World. They're this giant rock band. She's like, well yeah, but like like she doesn't know them, but like she, like everyone else who lived in Arizona, saw them before they blew up. And I just think it's hilarious to me because her perspective on them is so different, having known them as a local band.
Oh yeah, I can relate to that. When I was in college, I remember seeing the band All Time Low open for SR-71.
Yeah.
And then I saw them play, they played at my college. They did a show in like the Commons, like performance area. And,
Uh-huh.
and then I think the next time I saw them was on Warped Tour when their EP was out and doing really, really well. And then I remember the drummer's dad coming when their first full length came out, and like me and all my friends were like, a band from Baltimore made it, and we like, I'm holding the CD right now. And then the next time I saw them was at the Barclays Center with Blink 182 and A Day to Remember, and it's like it's crazy. It's so crazy cool to watch stuff like that happen. Just like I remember seeing you I saw you for free eating chicken fingers, and then my girlfriend broke up with me after the set. So it's like the perfect pop punk experience.
Right. Yeah. No, I love when local bands do really well. Like I know most of the guys in Patent Pending, and I remember the first time I saw
I
Patent
love that
Pending
band.
open they're phenomenal. Like all of them are great and just great humans. But I saw them open for Bowling for Soup in Jersey somewhere at this like tiny dive, and I love Bowling for Soup. I've been listening to them since forever. My girlfriend at the time wanted to go, and we went, and like the whole band hung out afterwards, and like we hung out with Patent Pending, and they were really kind. And then when the record came out, I bought it, and I fell in love with their music. And then
What
like I
record
would
was
see them
that?
over the years at the record was, what the hell was the name of that record?
Save
The
Each
first
Other, the
full
Whales
length?
Are Doing Fine.
Yes, I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the one. And like I remember seeing them again, and they were at a larger New Jersey venue with Bowling for Soup, and like they became good friends with those guys. But like watching them grow, being friends with them all on Facebook, and then it came full circle because when I met my now wife, the song our first dance to was "Spin Me Round" from that full length record.
Yeah.
And like it was the song I loved, and also the song The Siren on that record reminded me of my spouse, and I played it for her all the time. And so like they were in the DNA of our relationship. And so when we danced our first dance to it at the wedding, my brother videoed it, and I was able to post it on Facebook and tag all the band members in it. And like they just got all emotional and were like super like sweet about it. It was just a really cool kind of full circle moment. And I love when that kind of shit happens, especially with local musicians, because everybody just wants, like, people make music for themselves, sure, but they also want people to connect, and like being able to get that genuine connection with musicians is one of the reasons I love the nerdcore scene, because everyone seems to just kind of really want to connect and like be seen, and it's less about being famous or like kicking down doors, even though like I'm sure any of them would love a giant check. It's more about the community, and the community in the nerdcore scene is unlike any other community I've ever seen. I think the pop punk scene is close, right? Like it's a familiar thing,
Yeah.
especially in the old days, like in the basement show stuff. And so like that's what I really get out of music, is like the emotionality and the connection that you can make through it.
100%. And like the nerdcore scene, like, and the punk rock scene, they all have that like DIY kind of ethics that you learn from
Yeah.
old punk rock. I'm just it'll be out by the time you finish this, but you should really tune into my next episode if you're a big fan of Bowling for Soup. That's all I'm gonna say.
Excellent. I will.
Something very exciting that I'm really excited to post.
Very cool.
So yeah, they are maybe one of the most fun bands I've seen live. They're really
Same.
fun live. A bunch of years ago at Ram's Head in Baltimore, which is like where it's not the arena, but it's a big rock club. I saw Less Than Jake and Real Big Fish, and that was
nice.
that was an incredibly fun show. I love Patent Pending. I saw them play when I was referring to those like armory shows I used to go to in my hometown. I saw Patent Pending at one of those shows, and I was just immediately a massive fan. Can you let Joe know? I would love to have him on. We've emailed, but we just haven't locked it down yet.
Sure, I'll see if I can connect with him. He's so, ever since the birth of his kid, like he's been so busy, and like they do insane touring. But yeah, if I speak to him again, I will definitely poke him for you. I haven't seen him in a while, but yeah, he's just the kindest, sweetest dude. And what really connected me with that band is like when you see him at a show, he will make the time to chat with you, and like he's not chatting with you thinking about the other 10 things he's got to do. He's connecting with you. He's there. He's present. Same with Mike and like anyone else in the band, really. Like, and same for Bowling for Soup. Like when they hang out after their shows, like they're really kind. They clearly care about their audience, which is huge. My favorite thing about Bowling for Soup as a fun band is that even though they didn't write Stacy's Mom, which of course now by the now gone, but
I
not
know.
forgotten.
I was really
Fountains Wayne lead singer. Like,
yeah, rest in peace, Adam.
But like they got the request so much that they just start playing it live. And like I think they were friends with the band, like they had connected over the years, but like literally they got the request so much that they just learned it, and now in their set they play it and go, "This is that song you thought was us, but it's not. It's by someone else." And then they play it, and it's great.
They
to
do a
have
good
that
job
sense of
of it.
humor about yourself is so important.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because like, and those two genres are some of the few that give you the ability to have that sense of humor. Because like, I don't feel like metal bands get the same credit. Like Phil Anslow couldn't, like in the middle of a Pantera show in between saying maybe some questionably racist stuff, just be like, "Oh, a lot of people think they would never break out like anything from their glam metal days, because you got to be angry." And but off stage they were all very cool dudes. Like I remember reading this great story, and it's something I always think about when someone mentions Dimebag Darrell, is he was doing an autograph signing, and this kid wanted a guitar, and he was with his dad, and he was like, "Oh, you got to get him. Got a budding rocker, Dad. You got to get him." And he had just been laid off and didn't have the money, so like he had someone from the store like make them hang out, and then also get me like a starter guitar because I want to buy it. And so he bought this kid a guitar, and I'll always just remember like cool stuff like that.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, because when you're doing it for the right reasons, when you were doing it for like creative expression and the joy of the show, and not chasing a paycheck, I feel like you're more inclined to have things to have moments like that.
For sure. I think at the end of the day, we all want to get paid for our art, right? Like that's important. But I think that can't be the only reason. It can be a reason, but like the real reason has to be because you want to express yourself, because you want to connect with people. Like if it's just about the money, I mean, we've seen those bands, and some of them succeed and some of them burn out because it's not enough to keep you going.
Oh yeah, 100%. Thinking I'm great at segues. Thinking of like Mass Effect, the whole like multi-choice thing in games, I find so nerve-wracking, because I would just be saving all the time so that if I got it wrong, I could go back. It's like when I would read Choose Your Own Adventures, and then like, gotta go back. Got the bad ending. I remember being stressed out like the first time I played Metal Gear Solid, and I had to like give up during the torture scene, and then just feeling so much regret when Meryl's dead at the end of the game. I was like, no.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I've played the Mass Effect trilogy. I mean, I've played 1 and 2 at least 8 times. I played the third one only a couple times because I didn't like it as much, but I'm trying to change that now. But like, what I love about Mass Effect with multiple choices is that technically none of them are wrong. Technically, they all just lead to a different outcome. Right. Although I would label some choices wrong in the third game because it causes you to make certain characters die, and that just, we can't have that. But I agree. Like, I'm playing through Uncharted 4 right now, which I had never played before. I just recently finished the Uncharted trilogy, and like, there are moments where, as Drake, you can make choices in like your response, and I don't. Like, I know he'll say something different, but I don't know if it actually affects the outcome of those moments. Yeah. And so now my brain is like, well, do I have to go back? Maybe I'll play through it again. Like, I mean, who has time to play games more than once at this point, right? Like, I mean, even though we have a lot of time in the quarantine, like, there's a lot of games out there. But like, I guess I never viewed it that way, so I don't get that stressed out about it. That said, when a game is too difficult for me, like if I hit a wall, I will, like, I don't throw controllers anymore because they're worth too much. But like back in the Super Nintendo days, I threw some controllers. I got real angry, like when I would die constantly in an old game or something.
Oh my God, yeah. Like you're 98% through your Pac-Man perfect Pac-Man speed run, and then you misremember which way you're supposed to go, and the ghosts get you.
Yeah.
It's a it's a heartbreaker. Are there certain games that are more conducive to Twitch? Because I find that world fascinating. Like, I have no idea how PewDiePie has like millions of dollars by playing video games.
Well, I mean, it turns out part of that is being a horrible racist and a sexist d-bag, but who knows?
And right.
No, but it's a good question, right? Like, I mean, Ninja has made an insane amount of money just playing Fortnite, right?
Yeah.
I am no big buck streamer. You know, I have like 150 something followers, and they're all really awesome people for spending time with me. But like, it's a good question, right? I wondered about that too. I tried starting to stream 4 or 5 years ago, like in the early days of Twitch, and like I couldn't do it. I burned out. Like, it just didn't feel right. I felt all this pressure to like perform. And then it wasn't until I met a streamer named Tanya, who goes by Cypher of Tyr, who was like, "You're overthinking it. If you have an audience, they're going to turn up no matter what you're doing. So just do something you want to do. If that morning you don't feel like playing anything and you just feel like talking, then do that. They'll either turn up or they won't. But like, don't put the pressure on yourself to have to play something." That said, I've found my greatest success with narratively interesting games or strikingly beautiful games. Like, the highest view counts I've gotten are when I played The Last of Us, Shadows of the Colossus, and like now I'm currently playing through Alan Wake because I just finished Control on my PS4 and loved it. And Alan Wake is an earlier Remedy game that I never played. And so like, I found that if it's an interesting story or it's a game that like is a little weird or curious, more people will tune in for that. I've streamed myself playing multiplayer games and like Animal Crossing and Stardew Valley, and those had smaller audiences because I think people are either into that stuff or they're not. There's less curiosity with it. But at the end of the day, I need to be playing something that I want to play. I've tried playing something for like doing the thing where you play Dark Souls even though you're bad at it because people can laugh at you dying, and like, it's just inauthentic. Like, I don't like Dark Souls. I'm not good at it. And so those streams didn't last very long because it didn't feel it's like when an actor is trying to play a role that's not true to themselves, or the writing isn't good enough. You can see through it. Or when someone's like lying to you, telling you that they like something when they don't, you can kind of smell the bullshit. It's that kind of thing. I feel like if I'm playing a game for the first time, that's fine, because then it's a genuine reaction, right? If I hate it, we'll learn together. But otherwise, if I'm going out of my way to play a game, it should either be something I've never played before or something I like, because something I purposely don't like feels less authentic and is also just not fun for me. And at the end of the day, I have to have fun doing it. Otherwise, what's the whole point?
Exactly. Do you think there's a similar community sort of attraction to Twitch streams compared to like similar to podcasts? Because I'm sure I'm not quite at the okay boomer level yet. I'm not in that age range, but I definitely have had moments where I'm like, what's the appeal of watching other people play video games? And I've done it several times, and I just don't understand.
Well, so I think that's a good question. So I think at the end of the day, yes, I think people are fans of certain streamers in the same way they're fans of certain podcasters, right? And sometimes for me, I'll have it on in the background, not even watching the person play, just listening to their banter, because I like their personality. I think that at the end of the day, the kinds of people who watch Twitch are either people curious about games but not having the skill to play the games and wanting to see them played through, or people who grew up watching other people play games. Like me, I like to be the player, and I may even prefer to be the player. But that said, if I'm with friends who are playing a game that's either too hard for me or I'm not interested in actually holding the controller, I'll still probably sit and watch them play, like in the space. Like an early story is one of my best friends, Matt, which wasn't confusing at all growing up ever, was playing through Resident Evil 2. And I am a wuss when it comes to games. I cannot play scary games. I'm just a coward through and through when it comes to fake zombies. In real life, I tend to be a little braver, but definitely with fake zombies, I am easily scared. But I remember I could never play Resident Evil 2, but I was enraptured watching him play through it, because at least if he was scared, we were both scared. It was communal. I wasn't alone. And so like I liked watching him play it, and it's a game I still can't play through on my own, but like I loved watching him play it. And I think that's what made me a fan of Twitch and made me want to participate in Twitch, is growing up watching others playing games and liking that is the gateway to Twitch. I think if you're not really interested in watching people play games, then yeah, Twitch is not going to be for you. Just in the same way that, like, I have friends who are like, yeah, I'm never going to listen to your podcasts. I don't want to listen to you spend an hour talking about your favorite video game. I'm not interested. I'm like, that's perfectly fine. I get it. You know, I think the gateway is where your interests align, and that will bring you into those kinds of audiences.
Absolutely. If you got scared at the original Resident Evil, the remake will give you nightmares.
Yeah, no, I tried playing the demo and I got about 10 minutes in and I was like, nope, I'm done.
Well, just the fact that you can hear Mr. X's footsteps constantly while you're trying to play is, and I've heard like the Resident Evil 3 remake is even worse because Nemesis will just come after you like fast.
Yeah, he'll like just shoulder check you, like jump into the scene or just like jump over you and then be there. Yeah. No, yeah, those games are definitely not for me. I get why people like them. They look really cool when other people are talking about them, but no, thank you.
Yeah. This is something I like to ask sometimes because this has been a really nice conversation. One quick thing before I ask, I will say if you've not heard the pop punk band State Champs cover "Real World" by Matchbox 20, you need to go ahead and do that because that is
I will do that.
They do a great job of it. It's from a compilation called "Songs That Saved My Life" Volume 2, and
Nice.
The band Silverstein on that same compilation also does an amazing cover of "Disarm" by the Smashing Pumpkins.
Oh, cool.
So those are what I would suggest finding on Spotify. What is something you want to make that you haven't made yet? What's the next project?
Oh, what a great question. I don't know. Like, I'm really happy with the projects I have now, which is kind of a cop-out, but like it's not like I'm not doing enough as it is, right? But that said, like I don't think I need more podcasts to host anyway. Audio engineering and editing, which I've been getting paid for a little while now, that I'll happily do for more stuff because I actually like audio engineering in some sick, twisted way, in the same way I like spreadsheets. I just can't explain it. I just do.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if I could start a new project with limitless resources, the next thing I'd want to do is find some way to create content on YouTube. I don't know what that form would take. Like I watch people who do video essays and I'm jealous. Like I love that format. I love talking at the camera and talking about a thing you like. And one of my friends that I grew up with, hanging out with, is starting to breach that and has started. His name is Dan O'Mac. He's got a YouTube page. You should go follow it. He's really great and really funny. He started doing gaming videos where he talks at the camera and talks about what he loves. And I'm so jealous just because I'm like, look, he's just there doing it. I want to do that thing. And I have trouble wrapping my brain around it. I'm not a video editor, which I think is part of the problem. But yeah, if I could dive into a new project with unlimited resources, the next thing I would try and do is some kind of YouTube video essay series, I think.
Awesome, man. I think that would be really interesting. I like that stuff as well because, again, same way with podcasting, you can find people very interested in very specific things. Like I love reading about the sinking of the Titanic, and there's so many people like breaking down theories and making like computer animations. If you're like really into something, there's a home for you on the internet. If you got
that's definitely true.
Got to sift through, and which full circle, because we met at a Nerdcore show again, is I feel like a beautiful way that this conversation circles back. So you have 4 podcasts.
Yes, I have 4 podcasts that I host, and then a 5th podcast that I'm just the audio producer for. I'm assuming that was your cue for me to talk about those podcasts. And
yeah. Where can people find those?
So all of my podcasts are on any podcast platform you can imagine. I've literally scoured the internet and made sure they're everywhere. but there's 4 of them. We've mentioned a few of them already. My longest running one is Crash Chords Autographs. It's an interview series that will be on at some point, we've talked about, and I'm working on hopefully scheduling him in the next month or so. But it's an interview series that I've done for a long time. It started as an interview series where I just interviewed musicians, and it's grown beyond that. Now I interview pretty much anybody with a pulse who wants to talk to me, which has made for some great stuff. And that's at crashchords.com or on any podcast platform. My other 3 shows are on the Certain POV Network. That's Certain Point of View. It's a geeky podcast network that I am a part of. And Reignite, we mentioned already, is a Mass Effect podcast. We are just wrapping up Season 2 and the second game. If you are a fan of the Mass Effect games, it's a worthwhile listen if you ask me. We get super in-depth and super personal, and it's been really great. My other gaming podcast is called Fun and Games.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. My other podcast is Fun and Games, which is a gaming podcast. It's a more general celebration of gaming. We've done that show for a little less time, but it's been really great. We've kind of started to get our footing. We've started having guests on and interviewing game developers and community managers and talking about the parts of gaming that you don't often see behind the scenes. But it's mostly just a casual conversation about games with a topic of the day, or an interview that is about celebrating games and loving gaming. And then the third show on the network is a show called Screen Snark, which I do with comedian and musician Rachel Quirky Shank. And we have a guest on every week and every 2 weeks. And we talk about what we've been watching. It's super casual media chat about like what movie or TV you've been watching lately. And you talk about it for a bit. We sometimes do special episodes about Steven Universe because we're both obsessed with it, which has been a lot of fun. That's actually a show I think would be a lot of fun for you to do, Will, as well. But we'll talk offline. Well, I'll pitch. Those are those 3 shows. And then I'm the audio producer for Creative Quarantine. It's been a daily live stream during the week. Angelique Roche, who is a nerd personality, interviewer, presenter, badass human, is bringing guests on and talking to them about being a creative in the quarantine and what that looks like, and how do you stay focused, and how do you recuperate, and how do you relax, and how do you continue to make money and survive. It's been a live stream every day, but I've been taking the audio from the live stream and turning it into a podcast that's on the Broadway Podcast Network. And so while I don't host or have anything to do on the mic with that show, I've been helping produce it, and it's been a blast to do. So if all of that was too much for you, simply go to twitter.com/DJ_Stormageddon, and that's my Twitter, and you can find everything I just talked about there. Because if I had to remember all of that, I too would forget. So that might be the easiest place to find me.
Excellent, and I'll have links for those in the description, because I've favorited all those shows, and absolutely, you just let me know when I'm gonna do your show. I got a lot of time, so I'd love to chat with you more, Matt Storm. This has been fantastic. Thanks so much for talking to me, man.
My pleasure. This has been a blast. I love the show. I love everything you're doing. And yeah, we'll talk more. This won't be the last time we're on mic together, I think.
Excellent. Sounds great, man. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, folks. That's our show for today. I appreciate you listening. If you want to check out Matt's podcasts, you can check out Reignite Pod, Fun and Games Podcast, Screen Snark, and Crash Chords Web are all available wherever you get your podcasts. So again, that is the Reignite Podcast, Fun and Games Pod, Screen Snark, and Crash Chords Autographs. Those are Matt's podcasts. You can listen to them wherever you get your podcasts like this. And I'll also briefly give a shout out to my supporter on Patreon at the awesome producer level, Mary Beth Mooney. As always, thank you so much for your support. I sincerely appreciate it. And also, if you're looking for organizations that you can donate to, if you are upset and looking to looking to engage in civically around the protests that are happening right now in response to the death of George Floyd, you can donate to the George Floyd Memorial Fund, the Minnesota Freedom Fund, Reclaim the Block, National Bailout, Black Lives Matter, Bail Project, Black Visions Collective, Campaign Zero, National Bail Fund Network, The Innocent Project, Justice for Breonna, another woman who was shot and killed by police recently. These are all, and there's a lot of people are being very vocal about ways that you can help that don't involve taking to the streets. So take some time and definitely research those organizations. Thank you guys for being here. That's all I've got for today. I will see you next time between awesome and disaster. Stay safe, everybody.